typically go over a lot of different mechanics to improve on, and it's really hard to focus on all of those at the same time. Uh, all right. So since you're the Vi, you're on this team, and I'm gonna just turn on your vision. Okay. So for the start of the game, I always like talking about win conditions. Win conditions are something that's good to rehearse, and it's really important because it tells you where your team strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and where their team strengths are, and what you should be doing to play to your advantages or play away from their advantages. So your team has a Zed who's probably going to want to split push mid game, a Garen who's probably going to sit in lane for most of the laning phase and then just going to try and run someone down, and then a kind of awkward team fight, but great amount of team fight. It's going to be just really hard for you to set it up. The best way for you to set up a Misfortune ultimate with this type of team is by finding an objective like Baron and finding a choke point. If you can find a choke point, they're going to have to funnel through to get to the Misfortune, and you can probably, with your ultimate, run them down to this area. The Garen can also run them down. But if you're stuck in a lane, it's going to be really easy for them to peel to the side of it just because of how wide these areas are and walk around to your carry. Um, Also, you have very limited peel for her. With you only have two abilities that can peel, and they have one stun. Slows realistically aren't going to peel a Katarina, or even a Yasuo. So that's your team strength. Your team strengths are in choke points, and that's pretty much choke points and split pushing. And if your Zed falls behind and isn't able to split push, you have even one less win condition, which is really difficult to work with. Your team fights part of the awkwardness is the Taric will allow you guys to also potentially run someone down because of his ultimate. So with his ultimate, they're going to want to disengage, and with the Misfortune's ultimate, you want them to be running at you. So it's really tricky to play this, and the way that you have to play this is towards choke points and to the split push. Okay, so what their team wants to do, the next important thing. Their team has a good amount of engage with the Scion ult and an amazing amount of dive. They have one backline champion and the rest is dive. Their split push is also really strong. But it depends who gets ahead. Because if the Zed's ahead, he's probably going to be able to kill whatever split pushing comes. And if the Zed's behind, he's probably going to die to any of the split push that comes to try and match him. So it's really important that you get this Zed ahead. Um, but this lane is really hard to gank. Katarina's pretty hard to gank. You're going to have to pay attention to how she's playing. And if she's bad, you'll be able to get a gank off. If she's good, you'll probably only be able to get her at 6 just because your ultimate will run her down. But your typical gank of just your Q is probably not going to be enough since she can just Shun Po out. There is something you can still do for this lane though. You can ward for it because one of the number one worries of any lane is getting fucked by the jungle. Zed is a very similar champion to Katarina, but if he has vision, he's going to be able to play fully aggressive. And if you have vision and the Katarina responds to his aggression by playing fully aggressive, you can gank that. So vision is going to be something that's really key in these kind of areas to set up the Zed so that he doesn't get ganked and is able to play aggressive. Um, okay. The next thing is how the rest of your matchups are going to work. If the Misfortune gets really fed, she's probably going to get dove every fight, but you still would be able to melt people if you get lucky. It's just that this is going to be really hard to play to. The next thing I would be trying to play to is the Garen. If the Garen can split push against someone, which he will be able to do probably up until 20 minutes, efficiently split push against the Yasuo, and the Katarina is not going to want to split push against him for sure. But I don't know. I think he gets outmatched by the Jax after that, after 20 minutes or so. But you could play towards him early and create a lot of pressure there. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where you're wanting to set up your fights, what you're wanting to do to control vision, and where you're going to want to play. All of this you should be thinking during loading, during champion select. Um, so you're going to want to play towards mid and top if you get the opportunity to. Um, yeah, so that's the start of this. I really appreciate how everyone's providing vision. I think that you guys caught. Okay, this is weird. All right. Well, okay. So what happens here? No one puts down a ward, which isn't necessarily bad. And I was just saying that it was a good thing that you guys walked up here to provide a vision line, but you then walked back without even warding. This is not a good habit. It happens so often that people get cheesed from early game, and it's just nonsense. It doesn't need to happen, and it's so easy to prevent with proper vision. The Zed solo invading was kind of silly, but imagine a world where you all were for some reason sitting in this bush. Doesn't that look like a free kill for you guys now? So it's really important to keep vision in key areas. Early game, level 1, level 2, um, you've got to pay attention. If you're picking out music or something like that, do that in champion select. Do that in queue. If you're responding to your girlfriend, then get break up. Say I'm playing League. That's more important. I'm just kidding there, obviously. But you do need to be present when you're playing a game, and part of being present is doing stuff like this. If you don't do stuff like this, you take risks that aren't necessary. They were able to get into your jungle here, and if, let's say, this guy for some reason did die, you now have no vision here, and what would stop them from continuing and walking around like this? It's really easy to fix, too. Just put a ward down here or stand here. It stops a lot of early game problems, and the mentality of League of Legends is one of the most important things, and dying early can start flame for no reason, and that can lose a game more than anything else. Um, so yeah, really easy fix there. You were gonna go mid, but he died. He didn't have flash, so yeah, he was gonna play a little bit risky to begin with, just because of that. I was watching your clear. Your clear is totally fine. There wasn't much you should have been able to do for this because a level 2 cheese gank here probably wouldn't have amounted to anything. Because Katarina still had flash. You might have kept the Zed alive, but that wasn't going to prevent anything from him dying a moment later. So if your mentality, you just said you wanted to try and counter gank, right? You know one of the best things you can do if you think someone's going to get ganked and you waste all the time to walk up here, you got fucking wards in your inventory. Everyone on your team has too many wards in their inventory. But you need to be concerned partially about yourself. And if you think he's going to get ganked, drop a ward. Drop a ward right here. He's not going to get ganked now. And if he does get ganked, it gives you that time that you were saying, I'm hanging around here for whenever he gets ganked. Well, it gives you more time to respond because you're going to catch him whenever he's fucking over here. That's an extra like 4 seconds for you to walk up. This distance is the equivalent of you being here. So if you take this blast cone over the wall, right, that's an extra 2 seconds. You're 2 seconds late to this counter gank if you have a vision here. Otherwise, you're 6 seconds late and he's already dead. So if you're aware of your laner going to get ganked, do something about it. And you see the Jax's bottom, so you know that the Jax is not going to be ganking top. You see that Yasuo is at 1 life, and then you continue clearing. That's a problem. Yasuo doesn't have TP, so this is a really easy window for you to create an advantage for your laner. This means you're not watching the map. If you were watching the map, you would know that the Jax was not going to be ganking. Now this is a really bad time to go in his jungle. Do you know how long the Jax has been missing? And how much time you've wasted till you've done this counter invade? The Jax could already be here. And you already know that the Katarina was winning this mid matchup, but you know what you could have done with this time? come to this mid fight. You're focusing on counter jungling a camp when you could be ganking the Yasuo with 10% health or the Katarina with 10% health. And I'm exaggerating, but it would be 10% by the time you got there. Oh, and you let him die for maybe one Raptor, and then you show up, but it's too late. Oh, no, you get it? Okay. You could have kept your Zed alive if you had shown up earlier, though. And you see, you spent this time to walk over here while this was happening, and you show up for it, but you show up too late. That's a problem. So now you're playing towards bot side. This is, if you're tracking Jax, right? You know Jax just ganked bottom. And if Jax just ganked bottom, he probably did this camp. And I'm cheating, of course, because the vision in the Raffle file, it shows that he has done this camp. But if he had been ganking down here, this is an obvious thing. He would have already cleared this. So if the Jax already had cleared one of these camps, or two of these camps even, right? One or the other, he's probably going to be topside. So you don't have to worry about bot lane getting ganked. I would assume that they are not getting ganked. But you're down here, and you're, I imagine, down here because you think they're going to get ganked. If you're just clearing your camps to be down here, it's not necessarily awful, but you've had a lot of opportunities to gank, and you've ignored the top lane, which is a very important part of this early matchup in your win condition, right? And you showed up mid after the Zed died, which is another part of your win condition. So your win condition isn't necessarily you farming Raptors or Krugs. Okay, so the Jax did show up down here. That's weird. I would not have expected that. Let's see. How necessary were you for this, though, is another good question. I'm pretty confident that the Garen would have been able to pick up both of those kills, but there is a chance that the Jax would have slipped out. So you managed to make it a 2-for-1 by being there. Okay. Alright. So let me go over my bias here. I think dragons are not worth it. I think dragons are very overvalued, especially in lower ratings. And to convince you, of course, I have to tell you my logic. You're entitled to your own opinion. If you disagree with me, that's great. Go ahead and disagree with me. But let me explain first. So dragon gives you the potential to take an objective later. That's what all of the dragons do. They give you the potential to take something later. We'll start with Earth Dragon. Earth Dragon gives you damage to turrets, which lets you potentially take a turret later. Okay, Ocean Dragon lets you stay in lane longer because it gives you health and mana regen, which lets you stay in lane long enough to take the turret later because the enemy has to back or something. Fire Dragon lets you win fights, great, but you know what after a fight you're supposed to do? Take objectives. Because realistically, the only objective that matters in this game is the Nexus. And a row of turrets to get to the Nexus. So a Fire Dragon is the equivalent of okay, let's say that's enough to win you a fight, right? Great. But if you have the potential to get a turret instead, like stay for this turret, I think that you would have been able to get 70% of this turret's health maybe by staying here. So I don't know if in this context it would be that worth it to stay, but if the Garen stays to secure Dragon, then you're going to lose probably 40% of this, and Yasuo is going to get a lead in XP, which means that your win condition up top lane is also going to fall off. Okay, so let me try and elaborate a little bit more on dragons and stuff like that, because I don't think I've convinced you just yet. So whenever you win a fight, the only thing that matters after you win a fight, like what you just did here, right? You just won a fight. The point of winning a fight is it lets you have the potential to take an objective later. Now that their bottom lane and jungler are dead, you think that you can take a dragon. That is an objective, essentially, right? So this is proving that whenever you win a fight, you are able to take an objective, right? Now, Fire Dragon wins fights, which lets you take objectives, okay? But if you could just take an objective, why would you sacrifice an objective for the potential to take an objective later? If you have an actual objective or just potential, actual is always the better decision. Um, Air Dragon gives you rotations, which lets you set up for better fights, which gives you a number advantage, which means that you're able to take objectives later. Now, another way you can set up for fights is with vision. In my opinion, a ward in the right spot is the equivalence of a kill. And that is because it lets you set up for objectives in the same way. A ward lets you know that you have a numbers advantage, or lets you avoid where they are going to have a numbers advantage, which lets you take something uncontested. In professional play, they hardly have anyone die, but they still are able to set up for these plays because they have all of their vision setting up for those plays. So in my opinion, Dragon is only the potential to get something later, and I'm sure you've had many games where you've gotten several Dragons and it didn't amount to anything. Dragon is the equivalent of like one kill. It's not very valuable. So, again, in this situation, I don't think that staying for the turret would have been very good, or even staying for the dragon, because Garen needs to go back top lane before he falls too far behind from that TP. Or he stays in this lane and then you guys like let the lane swap in a very weird way, which I don't think would be a good idea either. So I think Garen needs to go back top lane, and that leaves that you and the Taric to do this dragon, which would take fucking ages. Or you and the Taric on this turret, which would also take fucking ages. So in this context, you're not going to get too much out of this fight. But what I would do next is I would be looking to is probably try and help mid if you can, or set up vision around here to protect from a future gank, because Jack's decided to come bottom a lot so far. So he thinks that his win condition is getting the bot lane ahead. Your decision to go for Dragon in this case isn't terrible, but I wanted to explain my bias. I would say that this is the equivalent of doing anything else that I suggested in this situation. I just wanted to explain my bias because whenever I see someone value Dragon this much, I feel like it could be a problem. So I'm explaining my bias. I think that your decision here is fine, but that's just because there was nothing better to get. If you can get something better, always get something better. Yeah. Yasuo could have definitely stayed an extra wave here, and he could have probably gotten 30% of this turret's health, like I said. Um, but the bigger part is he has an XP lead, and that 6 and Ignite is a lot in this lane. But again, Garen would have been late no matter what he did. He just would have missed one wave instead of two. So he was there for this wave because the Yasuo didn't push it hard enough. But Yasuo was really scared and walking away instead of pushing it hard. So you are really bad with vision control. I know that you put this ward down, but this was the only ward I've seen you put down this game. You don't buy pink wards either, and this is your first gank on mid for real. Okay, recalling is also something important then. Um, your time that you were farming down to Krugs here, it did end up getting you a kill, but you got to make sure that you do recall in order to use a lead. You did get the kill mid, and after you got the kill mid, you probably should have recalled there. And that's in order to make sure you were able to use your lead. The equivalent now, since did you hit 6? You did hit 6. Okay, you do have a spike here because you're 6. But because you hadn't shopped, at level 5, you were the equivalent of, a Yasuo who was 0 and 4 at that point. I'm just making up shit right now. But you get my point. You weren't able to use your lead. Your only lead is XP. And if you weren't 6, then you didn't have a lead at all. You need to make sure that you use your lead, and I'm not saying recall after every kill, because if you can get an objective like a turret, always fucking stay for that. If you have to get Baron pressure, always stay for that. But you went for Krugs, and I didn't expect the Jax to be here, so it did pay out. But in this case, I would have recalled instead. Sure, go ahead. Uh-huh. No. Uh, so, okay, I see where he's going with that, and I don't necessarily think that that mentality is wrong. And someone else that I reviewed, he got a kill up here, and then he based immediately. And he based instead of staying for the turret, and after he went to base, he went and cleared this camp for some reason and then walked bottom. Now, this is like a pathing issue whenever that happens, and if your objective was to path to bottom after that, then you would have been better off to walk down here, clear these two camps, recall, and then walk bottom. Yes, I totally agree with that. Staying for camps makes sense. Yes. But in your context, where you were staying around for, you got one extra camp and sat around wasting a lot of time. Um, let's go back to this. Where were you on that kill? So, okay, right here, right? You come and you get your kill, mostly because she misplays it, honestly. And you stay for the wave, which makes sense. But, okay, Raptors, I guess. And then you do Krugs. Okay, so there wasn't too much wasted time. The only wasted time was whenever you sat here afterwards. Okay, I was looking at the wrong time whenever I got that bias. Okay, okay. I see where you're coming from, and I'll give you credit there. I'll agree with you. Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if it would have affected anything either way. So I'll agree with you. Staying for your camps was probably the better move there than recalling. That is playing to your win condition, and that is a great gank. Once you got 6, this was the perfect lane to gank. Yeah, staying on this turret isn't bad. He probably wants this lane to end, partially. And you did see the Jax top lane, so it's not like you were going to get ganked while doing that, or have someone come to respond. There was no way you were really going to get the tower, though. He just wanted damage on it, which is okay. Um, hmm. And then your recall here? Okay. You do need a recall. I still... You need to find a window to recall. I don't know when exactly you're going to find it, because I'll agree with you. Well, you know what? You did give up your blue buff for not being able to come over here afterwards, right? And I know you weren't able to come over here because of a lot of other shit that was happening, right? But if you had walked up here with you're very healthy, you even have red buff, but you have no items, you wouldn't be able to fight the Jax. You wouldn't be able to fight the Yasuo. So you can't contest things. You can't. And if you can't contest things, it doesn't matter if you have an XP lead. Because the XP lead you got for sitting on this wave, you end up losing because you can't contest your blue buff or the Gromp, right? The Raptors that you stay for down here, you lose your Gromp. The wave you stay for here, you lose your blue buff. I understand what you're saying for staying for, and I just disagree with staying this long. At some point, you need to find a window to back. Um, I think that you're really overstaying your welcome with trying to recall for like a completed item. You have 3 kills and 57 CS and you haven't recalled. That is a problem. Now, when you recall, I'll give you credit whenever you did Raptors and then this and we're down for the bot lane gank. And I know you wanted to stay around because you were 6, but like you gotta find a window to recall. And you're gonna lose this 2v2. You see you have no items. You can't go in on that. Yeah. Especially because of how fed you are. You just haven't cashed in yet. You are equal to them, even, because they are both level 7 and you're level 7. And in this situation, you're also out of mana. Part of that's, of course, because they stole your blue buff, but part of it's also because you don't recall. Um, yeah, yeah. This one I actually would have stayed for at this point because there's nothing to contest on the map anymore. You already checked your blue buff was gone. You're not going to be able to uh, pressure mid or bottom or anything like that for a little while. Yeah, so that one I would have stayed for. Your Zed's going to be a little bit sad now, but he's already kind of losing this matchup hard. Well, it's a lot of different things. His problem early game was he didn't have flash because of this. His problem mid game was he didn't respect her damage spike because she had levels and items on him. And his problem now is because he's been taxed a little bit. Because think about this: you've taken at least 2 of his waves, probably 3 of his waves, not intentionally, but just because of the progress of the game. Because you took the wave after he died, you took this first one under turret, and you pushed an extra wave. So he's at least 3 waves behind, not considering kills. So he's lost this lane very hard. And you're going to have to come back and like do a lot for this lane. Top lane is also in a bad spot because look at that XP lead I was talking about. And he has Ignite, so if you never kill this guy, Garen's never going to come back in this matchup. And your bot lane isn't really your win condition here. They'd have to get a really good Miss Fortune ultimate, or she'd have to get really fed to deal with their amount of just dive. This is a really unfortunate comp for Miss Fortune to be playing into. But you see, this is the nature of this lane. Now Zed lost to 4th wave. Just an idea of what. Partially, these are your decisions because if you had shown up to that earlier fight, right? That earlier fight, killed the Katarina before the Zed died, Zed would have been there for probably 3 of those 4 waves because the Katarina wouldn't have had this item advantage. Those early decisions have consequences. You were going for this camp, and you see how much you focus on camps? Your camp over here that you took, and then your overstay issue that I pointed out. Like your first recall, you get part of a Trinity Force and your entire warrior. That's way too much gold. You have to find time to back. Yeah, I mean, I would have expected the cat to be going bottom there too. That was a good tracking. That was a good job tracking. Um, a lot of the times people do have problems tracking champions and junglers, but you seem to be more on page than I am here because you also, for some reason, knew the Jax was going to show up bottom. Whether or not you did, you were positioned on the right side of the map. So coincidence or not, you're tracking very well. Your problem is so far overstaying quite considerably. You tax quite a bit. Um, those waves that you took, even though you're saying you wanted to stay for XP and stuff like that, probably half of that XP the Zed could have gotten, and half of that gold the Zed could have gotten, just if you had let it stay where it was. Um, you also play to the wrong win conditions, and you ignore any potential ganks that you could do, and you don't ward. So far, you have probably 5 problems that are very, very easy to improve, actually. Um, so you just need to become aware of them. That was a good attempt, I guess. you should know if you're tracking the Jax that he's going to be around here, and he shows up mid. You guys got first turret because of that damage you did earlier. This was actually, see, the Jax, or not Jax, the Zed's decision to stay here was not necessarily a good one at the time, but it panned into a great decision here because whenever you caught the Katarina roaming, you were able to get this first turret. So the Zed has at least had one good decision this game. Even if I've been flaming him, that was a pretty good decision. Alright. That was a pretty good dive. That was very greedy of them to stay under that turret. And now you got another turret. So here, going for the dragon again, I actually do agree with. Because if you stay in this lane, Katarina could come and combo down for like a triple kill. So I would not be staying for the next tower, and I would only be... If you stole the blue buff, you wouldn't be able to get dragon probably, just because people would be respawning and walking down here. So going for the dragon here, this one I also agree with, but this one I agree with strongly. The other one I gave you a pass because everything else was about the same. This one I agree with strongly. Oh. But you don't have vision. Okay, that's... I didn't expect the Katarina to be there. I expect her to be coming down in lane. Well, this proves my point that she could have triple killed you guys. I do agree with the Dragon Call here, and... Yeah, all of you have 2 trinkets. Well, except for the Garen, who's been warding all of the time, and I guess Tarek's been using a couple of them, but I don't know where those have been because they're not anywhere that would give you any vision. You still haven't bought a pink ward. If you have a map that's this dark, you should at least get a defensive pink ward out there. If you had a defensive pink ward and you were able to pick where you put it, I would be putting it either in this bush or in the river bush here, because that way you could catch the Katarina roams like what you saw earlier. That would also defend your jungle, and it would also set up for gank routes, for the Zed and for you. So try and get one down over here. You had so much gold, and you need to be able to do something for your team, right? That's something you can do for your team. I told you you could have put a ward down over here earlier, and I'm telling you now you can put down these. I told you your Zed, the best thing you could do for him is ward over here and ward over here, but at this point, it seems like he's just dying in a 1v1, which means that these aren't really going to matter. The only thing you can do for this lane now is make sure you're, like, fucking gank it, like, for decades. You gotta be here a lot. You tax that whole wave, too, before you go for the kill. Do you see what you do there? You do a lot of taxing. You have now, at this point, taxed about 6 waves. From your win condition, too. Flashing for that was greedy. You still didn't get anything. Well, yeah, there you go. There's the greed I was talking about. Yeah, well, the Zed's not really strong. This is also just pure greed. They're both dead. So, at this point, I don't know how well you'd be able to defend this turret. The Katarina should be able to dive with their damage too. So I would be really careful with staying here. And look how much more you're taxing. Oh my god, man. This is also an XP tax. Do you see the... And that time, yeah, the Katarina, you saw her dagger over the wall. You knew she was over here. Zed's just hunting for money because he has nothing. You should be able to pick up both of those. Okay. Ended up working out. Partially because you shopped, honestly. Okay. So whenever you win a fight like that, I'm telling you earlier, like, what objective can you get afterwards? Truthfully, there's not a whole lot you can get afterwards, but there is. You see this wave, you know that someone's going to respond to this wave, or at least it's going to do some turret damage, right? So if someone's going to respond to this wave, and half of their team is dead, you could probably group bottom with your team, get vision over here, and set up for another dive in just a minute, while your team, you know their team is going to be split. So part of their team is going to come up here, and you have a chance to set up the important vision, the deep vision, and be able to set up for this dive. Even if they don't dive, by the time these guys are respond and walking down here, the wave will probably be able to be right here. So it doesn't even have to be a dive. But if you're looking for money, you got Scuttle to take, you got Wolves to take, and you got Vision to set up for. That's all you need, because you know people are going to be responding to this. Yasuo's dead for 19. He's not going to be the one there. It's probably going to be the Jax. And Katarina's probably going to be the one running mid. How many waves is that now? I've lost track. But now this is a really risky play for them to be this deep because the team's responded and Katarina can roam there. Do you see how easy this play would be if you were here? You're fucking fed as shit, man. You could kill that Yasuo for sure. You would have been able to also provide extra crowd control to make it so that the Misfortune could probably ultimate or even walk away if nothing else. But now they're both dead because this was a risky play without vision, and as I said, the Katarina was going to roam down. She's not even needed, though. Okay, so now for my bias on Herald. If you're winning, Herald is the equivalent of probably half a turret to a turret, and if you're winning by a lot, it's the equivalent of pretty much the game. But if you're even or if you're behind, it's either worth half a turret or less, because you're never going to get an opportunity really to use it. If you're taking Herald whenever you're behind, the only thing that it's doing is it's denying them Herald. And if you look at the gold, your team's actually ahead, but you're way behind in map pressure. If you group mid with this thing and you drop it here, they're going to respond to it and kill it before this turret dies. It's going to be half of a turret. And that's at best case. Depends when you put it down. If you drop it top turret, or top lane, then you better make sure it's already at the turret and no one else is here, because the Yasuo is going to probably be there in just a second. And judging by the map, the Jax is going to be up here. Again, cheating vision, but you know that they would clear probably. Actually, that was not the Jax. Cheating vision. Cheating vision. Yeah. So your decision to take a potential objective, you know, half a turret or less, for, I don't know, half a turret or more? Oh, and the or more part, let's look over here too. So, again, these are the same thing as Dragon. This is the potential of an objective. You just gave up 2 guaranteed objectives. And remember that gold lead I was talking about? Look at that sway. All of a sudden, you lost a 3K gold lead. Or rather, you were 1K ahead, and now they are 2.5K ahead. And then you pick up some kills, I guess. And then you lose some kills, I guess. It's all over the place. Oh, and are you losing another turret? Oh, beautiful! This is objective control. And this is a great example of, if you focus turrets in your games, what you'll do to the gold. Do you see the gold difference now? Your team was 1K ahead, and now you are 3K behind. All that took was one decision where you guys gave up 3 turrets. This was one decision to get a potential objective. Could have been Dragon, but it was Herald. And you gave up 3 turrets for that. You need a play to focus turrets because you're still doing a lot for your team if you do that. And again, the times you were bottom, there wasn't really the option to take a turret, but you definitely could have defended a couple of turrets. And the Zed probably can't split versus anyone now because he's really far behind. Look at that, 75 CS. Oh my god, Yasuo's even further behind. What is happening this game? Okay. Well, that's weird. I don't think I would have really expected the whole team to be there because I saw the Yasuo bottom and I thought he would have stayed bottom. It was a it was a good flash out, then it was a good re-engage. This is a good fight by you guys, and it's just that win condition though. I agree with what you did, but it was just that gold lead. Like they and also of course counting because they had 5 people here and you had 4, but you killed one right away. So I agree with what you did here. It just didn't work out. So it's not always going to work out. Uh, that was probably actually your chance to disengage completely. So maybe I would have skipped the re-engage. Now you've used up all of your crowd control because your Q's probably not up for a little while. I thought I saw you use it over here. And the Katarina is going to be able to ult. Yeah. Okay, okay. So I agree with the initial part of this play, but I disagree with the re-engage. So from here, we'd be trying to get out. Whenever the Misfortune gets her ultimate off and you get 1 kill, probably should have just left it. That's easy in hindsight, but in actuality, there should be a couple of things you're thinking about. What abilities do you have to stop Katarina? Because, as I said, their team is going to want to dive, and if you kill their one backline champion, that's not going to matter compared to the damage that Katarina is going to put out. Katarina has 7 kills, too. So if you need to be able to somehow stop the Katarina and stop the Jinx, right? If you ult just the Jinx here, in this fight, the Katarina is going to be able to go in. If you ult the Katarina in this fight, well, she was probably too far away for you to ult, then you still don't have any follow-up because you know where your damage is? So whenever you chase this kill down, you weren't watching the positioning of your team to follow up with damage, and then you weren't watching what kind of crowd control you had available. Maybe the Garen could silence, right? Okay, sure. But I think that's all you really had. So I'm pretty sure Taric used his stun too. Yeah, right here. Taric used his stun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His cooldown's probably like 8 seconds on that ability or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is. I don't play a lot of Taric. But it definitely was down whenever you started that fight. And you need to be watching for what resources you have to stop their carries. Plus, you need to be watching your carry. Because they only really care about diving. Like, Katarina's definitely going to dive that. The second you engage this, she's on your carry. And if you'd been playing to your win condition earlier and somehow got the Zed ahead, he probably would be the one who's pushing this lane, right? Like he is now. But someone would probably have been here responding to him much earlier because he would have been in this lane and stayed in this lane. The Yasuo came down here to stop the Zed, but the Zed saw the Yasuo and backed off because he was really far behind. Then he came back once the Yasuo left. It would have been a very different situation if your win condition panned out. So here, I feel like you're trying to focus Dragon again. Is this kind of what's happening? Are you looking around for Dragon? Well, Dragon in this case it's not free because Baron is blind. You have no vision over here. In the situation that people showed up top to respond to Herald, great. You created a situation where they had to respond to Herald, but see what this did? This got you jack shit. And and now this 3 turrets that you sacrificed for this play didn't even get to the turret. As I said earlier, if you're behind, Herald is definitely not worth it. The only purpose is to deny it. It's not. It's don't even bother with Herald. It's not even a potential objective if you're behind. And map pressure was what you were behind in. You were ahead in gold at that point in time. So Dragon here, I disagree with completely, partially because you need to make sure that you're able to control Baron vision before you do that, because they could easily be coming over this way. They have some really strong carries, and if one person showed up to stop this, and 4 people went over here, and you guys did Dragon, 100% I'm pretty sure they could have gotten this. Staying for a turret over here is also not necessarily the best move, because if you stay for the turret here, they'll easily rotate from this to here. And you couldn't really go for this turret either, because if you were all down here, they would have been able to go for Baron. I think that your biggest problem here is you have no focus on your Baron vision. The jungler is the one with the most access to Baron vision at around 20 minutes. Around 30 minutes, your support has just as much access to it as you do. But at this point in the game, you need a fucking pink ward, and you need it either in this bush or you need it on the pit itself. You need this vision, and you need to start playing to this side of the map almost exclusively. Whether or not that means you're taxing top wave, whether or not that means you're taking Gromp, Wolves, and then a wave mid, you need to be somehow playing on this side of the map and controlling this side of the map. Your one win condition that I gave you earlier was with choke fights. If you're playing to fights where you force them to check and see if you're doing Baron, that's how you'll easily get them in a choke. And you see how much they care about Dragon? They haven't contested a single Dragon this game because no one fucking cares about Dragons. They didn't contest Herald either. They got 3 turrets. The fight that you choose over here by taking Dragon, you're probably going to lose because you have no numbers. Numbers up here. Your Zed wasn't there. Your Zed's forced out. Katarina's in. Yeah. So, Dragon for 2 kills is already not worth it. And this situation could have been prevented with proper vision control or just not doing it, because you saw their team was responding to that. People were walking down. I don't know if responding to bots the best. Okay, it is good. But you probably lost this. I saw you got the Jinx. You miss a lot of your Qs. After this, you should Baron 100%. Ping Baron, ping Baron, ping Baron. In a situation like this, you're not going to get inhib. You're not going to be able to get inhib because Katarina's up, right? And she's probably going to be able to poke you guys off a little bit, and that'll be just enough time for their team to get enough people up to stop you from taking inhib. So what happens after this, in most cases, you'll be forced back with kind of low health, and then they'll do Baron, and then they'll counter push down your inhib. The way you can prevent that from happening is just getting Baron and then grouping with the wave, and you'll still end up getting these turrets. It's just you prevent them from also having that counter push. If you think Dragons are worth the potential objective later, you should be thinking about Baron as the potential objective later, but more so, the guaranteed objectives later. And this would have definitely guaranteed you probably an inhib, because they don't have jack shit for wave clear. They have a Jinx who, if she's on the wave, is going to probably be in a very bad situation pretty fast. So staying for this, I would be pinging for the Baron. If you had just 4 people come to Baron, you would be able to probably do it. Same situation. You're also really fed and building damage, and Garen's building damage with some armor, which is good enough. But yeah, you could definitely do Baron here. Definitely do Baron. You're not going to be able to get this. Well, if you get the tower, I meant the inhib. Oh, and look at that. Red team triple kill. You gave up Baron 100% if they wanted it. This is the exact situation, just panned out top lane instead of mid. And that means that instead of getting 2 turrets, if you were with your team, you got 1. So, one of your problems, it seems like you also try and play to yourself. You ignore your team. Whenever your team was grouping here, you either had to group with them or be confident enough in your ability for your team to get this or get out. And their team definitely wasn't in a position to do that this game. Plus, my philosophy on shot calling is if you feel like you deserve to climb, right? You're better than the people you're playing with. You want to climb. Then that means you should be the one making decisions because you're helping your team win by shot calling. Lead them to victory. If you are better than the people you play with, then play for them. Be with the team, but also tell them where you want them to be. There's a lot of different ways you could communicate, from typing "Let's do Baron" to pinging it a lot, but just make sure you never flame because mentality is a huge part of League of Legends too. And if you flame, it's all right. That's some good willpower then. Is are they doing it? Katarina went bottom instead. Well, I mean, if they did go to Baron, it would have been free Baron probably, but Katarina, all of their kills went bottom. I don't know why Tarek went down here. And Miss Fortune doesn't have great sustained damage for an objective like Baron, so I don't think that the 3 of them would be able to do it. Not very fast, at least. The Katarina would be able to come there. You're not going to be able to get the inhib either because of Katarina based. You're playing off to yourself again over here. And this means you're probably going to try and get this turret for sacrificing your team again. See that? Yeah. Oh, okay. So you really do ignore your team a lot. Um, I know you're really fed, so you feel like you can just 1v1 anyone, but Vi really isn't a split push champion. If you want to be playing a champion like that, you need to make sure that you're able to wave clear really fast and take turrets really fast, and if someone comes to kill you, you can get out. Someone like a good example is Shyvana. Shyvana is something that can take turrets really fast, wave clear really fast, and kill probably 2 people that come to get her. Vi is a great engage champion, which means that if you're with your team and you engage and you're really fucking fed, whoever you get on is dead. And if you chose to get on the Katarina and the Katarina was dead, you'd probably win these fights because she's the only problem. At least the Jax is building full like damage and attack speed, so you'll probably be able to kill him too. But you're going to need to give him some attention. Baron focus, recalls, win conditions, vision control, playing to the wrong side of the map whenever Baron's up, dragon focus, lack of focus on towers, taxing, not playing with your team, not making decisions. You've only shot called for dragons right now. Not paying attention to your team's cooldowns or enemies, kill pressure. You ult the Jinx, you have to ult the Katarina in this case because she's just going to hop back in. Oh, the Taric got a great stun there. You should have been wiped. Please don't go for dragon here. Okay, good, good, good. This is exactly what your team should be doing since 20 minutes. Controlling vision in this area, looking for the choke fight, and catching someone out. You have a lot of pick potential. You're really fed. If someone walks in this bush, they're dead without even you having to ult them. Zed is also not necessarily fed, but still has items. He has his Duskblade, Youmuu's, and Black Cleaver. That's enough to burst someone down. Your Garen's also got a Duskblade, so he could probably burst someone down. So if someone's checking over here, they're going to fucking die. This is a great thing for you to be trying to do, but you need to make sure you're able to also manage waves while doing this. Right now, bot wave isn't a great spot for you to be doing this because Yasuo is responding over here. Top wave is kind of neutral because they're clearing it really quickly. This is a great time to be baiting or doing Baron. That's actually why I was saying you better not be going bottom, because their team was set up here, and there was nothing for you to get done here except for, yeah. This is a bit risky for you to be going for this deep vision, though. If you're trying to control vision, you need to have vision. These choices by your team are really risky. Ping them back. Again, shot call. If they're moving like this and you're fed, they'll probably listen to you. Because you see, now they're flanked. See, this is what you need to do every fight to the Katarina. Because you held your ult, she never really could go in. And then, well, not that you held your ult, but you focused her. And you did ult her. But yeah, controlling the vision over here made them check like that. It's just your team over here was not necessarily a good bait. I wouldn't have liked your... I did not like that your team was here. I saw you auto the turret there. uh... Yeah, you gotta just let people die sometimes. Whenever the Zed was walking over like that, you could have kited back to your Garen, because, yeah, there was nothing really for you to do over there. Yeah. I see that you're pinging this. I like this. You do have a pretty good advantage. I don't know why your team is all the way up here, but they are getting something over here, and they are creating pressure, so this isn't bad. You're going to still be able to get Baron. It's just going to take longer. So this isn't bad. It's just weird. Also a bit unnecessary. Okay. So what do you do with Baron? You have two people respond to the bot wave. That's fine. Since the bot laners are pushing this far, at this point I would have just grouped with them. This turret was pretty much dead, and you already had a wave stacking. And they were probably going to be coming to the bot wave. Like, the Garen was already down here. The enemies were rotating down there. You could have used this to catch them in the jungle, maybe. See, everyone's down here. What was that? Sorry, the sound effects were loud. Okay. Pinging mid turret would be a good idea. Yeah. Your Taric kind of ignores you, but everyone's grouping mid. Everyone else is grouping mid. Taric decides to suicide. You turn back and try and help him. Garen leaving that wave is unusual. Okay. So a lot of this is unfortunate miscommunications and your team being a little bit suboptimal, but part of this is also you being suboptimal, of course, right? That's always part of this. So in a situation like this, do you know what the point of kills are? Uh, yeah, I rehearsed this with you earlier to get you an objective later. If they kill the Terracure, which they're probably going to do regardless of what you do, they're not going to get anything because they're still going to have to defend this. So the next thing they have to do is they have to come to you guys into your turf where there's 3 of you, a bunch of minions that are Baron empowered, and fight you here. And by the time they kill this Taric, and if Taric stuns them or they run over this way, you'll probably have this turret 60% dead. And then if you auto it a few more times by kiting into their base, it's probably all the way dead, and now you have all 3 people ready to fight them. Taric in this situation is dead. Like the Zed over here, sometimes you need to let people die. Your decision to go on this guaranteed your own death as well, and it meant that you didn't get this turret. As I said, your team was being a little bit suboptimal here. If the Garen was on this turret that whole time you were being chased down here, then, maybe he got this turret. Maybe. If everyone was down here earlier, though, you wouldn't even be in this fucking situation. You were pushing mid lane as if it was the only alternative. If your team is grouping like that, you even saw the Garen walk down here, you need to just group with them. Maybe. Because you do kind of ignore your team. That is a little bit of a bad habit of yours. But yeah, if the Garen was on the tower this time, maybe. Unfortunate. But again, you could have avoided that whole situation if you had set up for it down here. I... Okay. Garen does still have Baron, and you guys still did get a turret out of it. But see how easy that was to take? Now all of a sudden you have a huge wave ready to take the next turret. Do you see how much damage you did to this turret when it was just one person attacking it and minions? You guys can take turrets really fast. Being down here was just the same as being mid. If you're going to be taking a turret, then you could just as easily have taken these two. Hmm. So if you're watching your waves, your top wave should be pushing out. So sending someone over here is actually a really bad idea right now. I would be trying to send people bottom and push out bottom some more. Because eventually they're going to have to send people top to respond to this. Otherwise, these minions are going to get to the inhib and attack the inhib with a huge-ass wave. Being mid right now is okay too, because if you do somehow manage to get this all the way up to their turret, it's going to be a very short time till you kill it. But communicate with your team. Here, if you recognize that this wave needs to be pushed out and this wave doesn't, before Garen even walks up this far, tell him he should be pushing bottom. Garen, push bottom. We'll group top or something like that. Whatever you say to him, but he doesn't need to be on this wave. Oh, okay. If you're trying to defend until Zed comes back up, though, what are you defending up here with no vision? Yeah, you don't need to be this far up. Part of the reason your team is this far up is because you're here. If you were waiting back at your inhibitor, then your team would be back here at your inhibitor. But even more importantly than that, you have no vision to be up this far. So they could flank you with a Katarina. They could engage on you with a Scion. They could have 5 people here, and you wouldn't know any of it. So you really do need to work on your vision control. It's a team-wide job ever since they added trinkets. If you're trading out for a red trinket and your map's this dark, you really can't. Because look at how no one's using trinkets. You need to keep your yellow trinket and you need to buy a pink ward. Red is a great thing for securing objectives, but if you pick the right time to do them, then it won't matter. I know that you tried to control vision in this area, but if you're trying to control vision in this area and you use your red sweeper and you just kind of sit in this bush and you walk a little bit over here with a Duskblade to pop this ward anyways, pink ward this, Duskblade this, you just swept this and you kept your yellow trinkets. But yeah, this fight you really shouldn't have even happened. This isn't defending with where you guys were. That's weird. He does peek, but he gets you a valuable deep ward here. Because if you do end up catching... Yeah, what? Fighting in lane is definitely playing to their strengths. They've got 3 GAs too. And since your team is full AD, you're going to have a lot of problems. That's not actually a bad engage, but it was too far away from the team. If you had layered your crowd control and the Misfortune got her ultimate off in the middle of all of that, would have been really good. But, of course, as I said, your team wasn't really in position to do anything with it. Yeah. Let me look at that again. And you guys were walking up to it, so Garen engaged a little too early. There wasn't a whole lot you could do there. If you had just let them die, they would have taken your base anyways. Okay. But again, everything has a build-up. Even though this one fight happened and you lost this fight, there was a lot that happened this game that you could have still both prevented and secured a win with. I did go over all of your problems earlier, but I'll try and see if I can remember all of them. One thing you definitely overstay, because so you, like in your jungle, you need to find a time to recall. I agree with some of the times you stay, but you need to use your gold at some point, because if you don't, you don't have a spike. You can't contest things like this. They counter jungled you and you couldn't, so all of that XP that you stayed for to get your lead, you end up losing somewhere else whenever you don't shop. You tax a whole lot. You should be thinking about if your laner is going to make it back in time. You also ignore ganking opportunities, which means you're not watching the map nearly enough. The Yasuo was a free kill, which could have drastically changed the way this game played out. One kill on the Yasuo, which could have led to 2 levels even, because he didn't have TP. You also ignore the mid lane in order to go over here and look at Raptors. They were fighting while you were invading, and you decide to ignore it. Um, though you also ignore your team in a lot of different situations where you choose to split top, where you choose to push mid instead of rotating with your team, where you I think those are the big two that you did. You don't control vision of Baron nearly enough. You did sweep one time. That's all I really saw. You need to get a pink ward for this. You need to. If you don't buy pink wards, you're doing a huge disservice to this dark map. Because that's the equivalent of getting yourself a kill. You don't focus towers nearly enough. You do over here stay for a tower, but this was a greedy play where you were avoiding your team. You sacrificed a quadra kill to get 1 kill in a turret, where if you had stayed mid, you would have probably gotten 2 kills. Or not 2 kills, 2 turrets. You value dragons a lot, but honestly, I don't think that any of your dragon takes were too problematic this game. I feel like a lot of those situations you wouldn't have been able to get anything else. I just wanted to explain my bias whenever I went over this. But the focus from the dragon is showing that you're putting a lot of emphasis on this side of the map. That's the type of emphasis you need on Baron. So try and switch your mindset over to Baron. I know it's a harder objective to take, But that type of control that you attempted to have over here, you need to have over here. You need to play a lot more towards your win conditions. Think about what your team wants to do later on. Think about where you need to show up. Because mid lane you kind of ignored, and I know that you saw him die, and that probably affected you to say that I don't want to bother with this guy, but you have to bother with him. Because one of my favorite expressions is you are only 1/5 of the way you're going to win this game. The other 4/5 are the other players on your team. So you've got to be working with them. You can't just ignore them. You're not going to solo carry like this whenever you're pushing this turret. You can't. You're 1/5 of the way you're going to win this game, no matter how fed you are. It just means that your win conditions change whenever you get fed. And your win conditions means that you're going to burst one of their problem carries, right? That since you built damage, that's what you intend to do. So yeah, burst one of their problem carries, but you still need to be with your team. Okay, another problem is you need to let some people die. The Taric over here that you engaged on to try and save, the Zed that you followed out, you sometimes need to let people die. That doesn't mean you sacrifice the Quadra kill in order to get a turret, but that means that you let the Taric, who's for some reason overstaying here after you pinged him 5 times, you let him die. You let the Zed that for some reason overstayed die. You have to do that. Your clearing is fine. It's actually fairly good. Your tracking is fairly good. Your I did talk a little bit about taxing, I think, but that's a pretty big problem. And yeah, whenever you try and control this area, that was one of the win conditions I gave you. The pick, you need to focus a lot more on picks, and the way you set up for that is knowing where the waves are going to push. I know you didn't do a whole lot of wave management this game, but you did tax a lot, so that you probably do wave management in a lot of your games. Set up waves where you can then set up for picks. Rotate with your team so you could set up for the picks. Remember how I said that you could have easily gotten this bot lane turret? You could have gotten your picks over here. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I don't really have a problem with you building damage. Everyone on your team was full AD though, which means that your damage was going to fall off. As you saw, they all got armor, and you didn't build any armor pen. So your damage falling off, you needed to end this game early. Trinity Force especially is an early game spiking item that falls off, kind of. The only thing you're going to be able to do after this is your CDR, essentially, is all you are. Cooldowns. How much you're going to be able to ult, how much you're going to be able to knock back. And with this build, you have 20% CDR. I would be looking into getting more CDR and a team that you need to provide utility for. Yeah, probably. But again, you should have been looking for another tank item. Maw is a good off-tank item, but your next item, like instead of Thornmail, I probably would be getting Randuin's, because that would help you kite the Jinx, or rather prevent the Jinx from kiting you with the slow effect. It would also give you necessary health to both survive the Katarina and their burst. It would slow, I'm pretty sure it slows the attack speed of Jax whenever he attacks you, so it's a very good and useful item. Thornmail is mostly for the grievous wounds, I would say. Which I guess the Jinx did have a Bloodthirster, but I mean, yeah, and it would reduce the crit. Randuin's is a great item. Uh, that being said, disclosure, I don't really play tanks. I'm not great at tanks. I play mostly damage champions. Probably why you built some damage, huh? Alright, well anyway, that's all I've really got for you. I hope some of it will be helpful. The vision emphasis and knowing when to recall will both be pretty helpful. But the most helpful thing I would say is to focus turrets more than you're focusing these objectives. Because you gave up a lot to take the Herald, and that literally changed the gold lead and lost you several fights. Whenever you focus this much on objectives that aren't turrets, you trade something. And you were willing to trade 3 turrets for that, which is not healthy for any of your games. So you have an overemphasis on the jungle aspect of the game, but not the game aspect of the game. Because all of these things that you do, this objective control of Dragon and Herald and Baron, is ultimate only, again, only to get this. If you can contribute in another way to get this, then just contribute in the other way. Get the guaranteed objective. Always go for the guaranteed objective. Again, I didn't have a problem with your dragons, but your Herald was definitely a terrible take. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you. Okay. Done there.